Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first of the real sessions at the summit. Glad you guys have joined us. We have quite a better number of audience from the sessions of last week, so really good start. I will start with a video of our welcome to all of you. Let me just run that through now.
Welcome to this Open Security Summit session. I want to give you a quick introduction to what we're doing and what to expect. So all sessions at the Open Security Summit are live streamed or recorded, and we share them for public use. And we publish them on the Open Security Summit YouTube channel, and we highly recommend you to go there and check out these amazing sessions that we already have there from the current summit and the training session that happened before. We want you to be involved, share with your network, and please share the Zoom links that exist on the OSS website, which you can find here, and these allow you to log in straight away and see the sessions. We have an amazing content for this week, from CISO to cloud security to CDR to COVID to DevSecOps, and also a number of sessions on other topics which are super critical and important for us to address, including worldly maps, which is a big feature of the summit. And we go every day from 10:30 till 10 o'clock at night. And as you can see, there's something for everybody here. So please be involved, participate, and join us. And just a final comment on openness and respect. At the summit, everything we do is about openness. We share the information, but also we try to release everything that is created under Creative Commons and an open source license. And we expect you to participate, to have mutual respect, to have an objective distance on your comments, and to be very professional. And finally, we put a huge focus on respect. We have a diverse community. This is about respecting everybody's opinion, and we expect nobody to feel discriminated or not comfortable during the sessions. We also support heavily the Black Lives Matter current situation that happened worldwide, because we believe that is super important to reset how we address these important issues in our society. Finally, share your views. Here's the hashtag to use, and we have a Slack environment that you can join from the website homepage and enjoy and learn.
Cool, that's great. I will. So thank you all for coming, and thank you for bearing with me, because we are trialing some things out. As everything happens last minute at the summit, that's how we roll. We're joined by Phil and Robin, and they're going to run us through some of their stuff. But I do want to share as well a quick poll that we've done. I'll just skip it. I'm just sharing some important information in the chat window, which I can't seem to paste. Great. So guys, this is still an interactive session. So I will be monitoring the chat if you have any questions, but if you have anything burning questions, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask our organizers, Robin and Phil. I think that's enough of me. I will just hand it over to these guys now.
Good start, Phil.
Morning, everyone. Welcome to the session. I am Phil Huggins. I have been kicking around security for long enough to have a lot of white hair. I tend to be more on the management CISO side of things. I dip into application security and have done since about 2000. Robin, do you want to introduce yourself quickly?
Yeah, Robin Oldham. So I come more from a consultancy background, having run the team at BAE Systems, covering predominantly the kind of cyber risk angle, but also security architecture and increasingly some of that AppSec side of things as well.
Cool. And what we're going to talk about today is threat personas and application vulnerability scoring. Threat personas is an interesting thing. It's something I've used off and on for a good 7 or 8 years now. in various different guises, whether that be coming from a risk perspective, coming from a more technical perspective. So we're going to do a brief summary on what threat personas are. You're going to create one. And then I'm going to look at a very simple application vulnerability scoring model that was produced in order to help engineering teams prioritize things that they find during their threat modeling sessions. And again, you're going to do that. And the goal for us today, very much, and I'm probably talking over my first slide, the goal for us today is very much to show something that we use, that we find helpful, and to find out from you how we can make it better so that we can publish it, open source it, and everyone can get value from it. Yeah, there's nothing owned here. So in terms of the first session, threat personas. Threat personas as a concept has been around for a while. It's based off of, oh, hang on, I appear to have.
And
just a warning, you are going to need to do some stuff.
that's good. And I forgot to say something, because these are the actual summit sessions. We do need someone to be taking notes. Yeah, okay. I will share the outcome format with you so we can take notes together.
Yeah, drop it to me on Slack and I'll keep going as we're going along.
Thank you. And we will, I will warn you guys at the last 15 minutes of the session so we can focus on doing a debrief and recording a 5-minute debrief at the end. The last 5 minutes will be the debrief of the whole session. So
yeah, we're going to follow this schedule to the second. It's going to be perfect.
We've practiced this a lot, as you can tell already.
That is great.
So this is the sort of thing that would have run a lot more easily when we were all in a room. However, I'm going to do a short introduction to what a threat persona is. We're going to break apart into groups to create some threat personas and hear back from what everyone's done. I will talk through the application vulnerability scoring method, show you a worked example, and then you will go off and, using your persona that you created first of all, you will score a vulnerability we'll give you. And then what we'd like to do is take your questions, get your feedback on the method. If you've got something to say in the meantime, say it, but there'll be definitely an opportunity at the end. We will also take comments and questions and everything after the session. So if you don't particularly want to do it in front of everyone else, come to us, because our whole goal here is to make something useful and better. So, threat personas. It's derived from user personas. So those of you who have more experience in the AppSec space, user personas are something that developers find useful when they are creating an application. In fact, the whole product team finds it useful because they get to understand what they're doing for who. They have a set of characteristics about an individual, what sort of tech they use, how good they are at using it, what their needs are, what they like, what they don't like. They give them names, and it personalizes it, and it allows them to have conversations about user needs and focusing on users. And by personalizing it, it allows you to have more human conversations rather than sort of formal requirements driving formal metric measurements and the like. It's more about, you know, how would Sandeep handle this? Why would Helen want us to do this or not want us to do this? And it's incredibly useful for developers to do that. What I have done in the past and continue to do is to create a threat persona itself. Now, a threat persona it's a little story. You know, you're coming up with a character. They're not real people. They shouldn't be real people. You get into trouble if you make real people into these. You tell the story of who they are, what they want, why they are doing the things they're doing, and then you grade them. Basically, there's a series of characteristics that you grade. And by grading them, it forces you to have consistent conversations. So between threat modeling sessions, between development sessions, between risk sessions, you can have consistent conversations about the threat you're worried about. But it also draws your conversations back to who are we protecting against, rather than being entirely focused on the technology, which is often a problem with security engineering, I find. I love the technology, and without a picture of somebody and a name that I'm trying to counter, I will focus entirely on a new bit of kit, a new bit of software. This is not new. I very rarely come up with new things. I generally just put a bit of polish on old things. This was something that probably was best described by the threat actor library developed by Intel. They created a great big a library for their own use. They've published it. It's useful. You know, I used it directly in the past. I found their language was very correct and not necessarily so easily accessible by people who aren't security people. But you know, to be clear, this is their idea, basically redone. All I've done when I've created these is I've tried to make it language that developers can easily take on board. In terms of that characteristics that I'd like to try and capture, are they internal or external to the organization? Do we think they're malicious or not malicious? So are they going to do things by accident, or are they going to do things because they're out to get us? What are their goals? You know, are their goals in line with the vulnerabilities and the data we have exposed? How skilled are they? Can they do this? Does someone have to give them a tool? Do they know how to do it better than we do? What knowledge do they have? So are they a customer? Are they just somebody on the internet? Are they an employee? Are they somebody who used to work for us? These are all things that are worth considering. Opportunity, you know, is again, are they just connected to the internet? Are they in the building? Are they in a supplier? These sorts of things are useful to consider in terms of our exposure. And what I thought was a made-up word, but Robin has proven to me is actually a real word, deterrability. So if they feel like
English dictionary, it's got to be real.
I thought I made that one up. There we go. You know, are they going to be careful? Are they going to be noisy? Are they going to, you know, step away if they feel like they're in danger of getting caught? That's something that's worth considering. And it's as simple as that, to be frank. In terms of an example, here is a good example. Now, I've recently been working with a healthcare business. So my examples are going to be healthcare related, but I've done this with financial services, fintechs. I've done it in defense. This just happens to be some examples from a healthcare environment. So in here we have a customer. She's trying to get drugs that the business doesn't want to give to her, and she's going to continue trying to do that over and over. And she knows she's breaking the rules. She's not happy, so she'll cause damage if she wants to, if she get away with it. She's a power user, so she's clever and understands how our business works, how our website works. Not a developer level of knowledge, but she understands what's happening, or is building up a knowledge of that. And that is the knowledge she's building. Every time she comes to us, every time she tries to get around our system, she's getting better and closer at how our internal processes are working. She's just another customer. So she logs in, she logs out, she's on the internet. She doesn't have any access to back-end systems. And she is prepared to break the law, but she doesn't want to get caught. So she will be careful, and she will try not to do things that are really obvious. Now, Marie, and I'll say right now, that picture is not a real person. There's a bunch of websites, which we have links for when you do work for this. There's a bunch of websites out there that will do AI generated faces. Back when I first started this, I used to use a lot of my colleagues' photos, and you know, sometimes in the readout meeting, you'd see executives looking a little bit sideways at colleagues. But these, you know, this is not a real face. This is not a real person, but she describes somebody that we worry about in that particular business. Somebody who has a goal for which we need to be cognizant that she will try every way, and that would include, you know, social engineering as well as trying to exploit weaknesses in our applications. Another good example is Disgruntled Insider. So happen to have a doctor for this one, again working for healthcare, has been turned over for promotion, not happy about it, wants to get revenge. It's pretty much as simple as that. She's not a power user. She doesn't understand technology. She doesn't know particularly how to run scripts, but she'll, you know, look for ways to monkey wrench. She's got access. She's a very trusted individual. So a doctor in a healthcare business is very trusted. She has access to the business. She has access to the systems we care about. And she is careful. She's deterrable. She doesn't want to get caught. She just wants to get her revenge. For this particular healthcare business, I've got about 9 or 10 different profiles, internal and external. But here you get a sense of the sort of the story I'm trying to get across to the developers. So when I walk into a threat modeling session, which this year has mostly been done online on Miro whiteboards, you know, we have a data flow diagram, we have a stride table, we have stride spelled out and all the definitions, and we have our threat models as well, all laid out on the board so we can discuss them as we go through it. And it allows us to say, you know, that's a vulnerability, but the person we're worried about can't get to it. They don't have direct access. Or that's a vulnerability, and somebody says, well, nobody would care about that. And I go, well, actually, we've got an insider who would care about that because it would let them get away with something nasty. So it's a useful part of the conversation about making the attacks real in people's heads rather than theoretical. Here is a slightly different formatted form as an external criminal. I think this is the format we're going to ask you to fill out in the breakout session. Is that right, Robin? Yep. Yep. So again, it's a narrative, a little story, something about who they are, and then the characteristics, choosing the characteristics we think are most related to them. You know, in this case, connected to the internet, personal gain, unconcerned criminal, he's coming at us, he's noisy, and he knows what he's doing as a power user. So, you know, these are useful ways of thinking about some of our threats we're worrying about. Now, Robin.
Yeah, time for a bit of audience participation. So yeah, we've got the template, and Dita, we want to try and put everyone into, how many people have we got on here? 30 people. Probably groups of, probably 6 or 7 groups, I suspect. If we can do that, put everyone in a breakout room. And then we've got a deck that we're going to ask the groups to spend the next kind of probably 10 or 15 minutes coming up with a threat persona for a particular threat actor that you might like to consider. There's an index on the front of the deck that I'm going to share, so you can first up pick who it is you're going to do and add their name to that, so that we hopefully don't end up with everyone doing you know, insider or cyber criminal or something like that. So we're able to split everyone into to groups.
So I have created rooms now. But don't go into them right now. Please listen to Robin and Phil before going in.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm just going to post the link in the chat, so you should be able to find it. And yeah, make sure you've got that open before you go and before you go into the breakout room. It should be fairly self-explanatory. There's some post-it notes, but yeah, first off, within your group, you need to give your persona a name, discuss and write their narrative, kind of work out what, you know, where are they from, what's their day job, what motivates them, are they happy, angry, sad, are they internal, external, malicious, not malicious. You can have a play around with thispersondoesnotexist.com, and there's another link as well in there for generating a photo. And don't worry about their kind of attributes at the moment. We're just kind of you're doing character development at the moment, so yeah, enjoy that. Hopefully that makes sense. If not, stick around. Phil and I are going to hang out here for a moment, and then we'll rotate around the groups in a minute. So if you've got some questions, stick around. Otherwise, we'll be dropping into each of the breakout rooms over the next 10 or 15 minutes.
Great. Some people already joined the room, so they haven't got the documents. So one of you might want to jump from room to room to...
yeah, just to make sure that they've got it. Yeah, I'll do that now.
Thank you.
All right.
And if you have questions, obviously head for the chat and just talk to us. How long, Robin, will we be doing this for?
We had it down for about 10-15 minutes, I think. But I think we can bring everyone back from the breakout rooms anyway. So that should be time for people to get stuff done. So probably just after past, I think. Great.
I will stay in the main room. So if you guys want anything for me to broadcast, I can broadcast to everyone, and we can all close rooms.
Can you make me co-host, please? Because I can only join breakout room 3, the one that I've been put in.
Okay, you are a co-host right now, but Interesting.
So I am, yeah.
Do you want? Which one would you like to go? I can.
Just give me a couple of seconds in each. Give me 30 seconds in each, and I'll make sure they've got the link and that there.
Okay. I'll move you to room 1, and once you're done with room 1, come back to the main room, and I'll move you to the next one.
Perfect. Thanks.
I'm going to stop sharing these slides here now, and that means I can then get in the chat, because I don't think the sharing seems to stop me getting in the chat.
Okay.
Okay, thank you everyone for your efforts. I think we might need to think about some diversity in the regions in which our hackers come from, but we'll pick up on that in a minute. Okay, so you've worked out who somebody is. You've got your narrative. Now you need to start thinking about some of the more constrained characteristics that makes your threats more comparable and can be used elsewhere. So what we have, and Robin, if you can share that in the chat.
Yeah, I'm about to. I've just finished porting all of the information across from the deck.
No, yes, I forgot you were doing that. Frantic copy and pasting. Excellent.
Yep.
So what we have is a little survey, a Google form that for your persona, you will fill in the characteristics you think relate.
And anyone else that you want to blitz through the.
You can do any of them if you. Yeah.
So do you want to bring it up and just click through on the screen, Phil? You can submit some answers so people know what they should be doing. So yeah, check out the chat, the Zoom group chat. There's a link there to a Google form.
Hang on, that link did not go where I was expecting.
Just get it from the chat.
Hang on, I need to stop sharing for a second. God.
We thought we'd give everyone a chance to kind of.
So here we go, a little Google form. Goals, what do we think these threat personas are looking to achieve? Opportunity, so what is the nature of their relationship to the organization? Their skills, how good do we think they are? The knowledge, how much do they know about you, the system, the things that are more specific to you. And deterrability, how likely are they to be put off? So fairly simply, first one, Vladimir Starsky, hacker for hire. So I think he's out for personal gain. I think he's connected to the internet. I think he may have, I'm going to be pleasant and say he's got developer level skills. I think he's external to the organization, so he doesn't know much about us. And I'd say he's an unconcerned criminal. Now, if you can go through everybody and fill in your own for each of these, I'll do the same. And then I think we've got some frantic collating to do later.
Google's going to do it for us. It's going to be fine. It's all going to be fine. So yeah, go through. At a minimum, please do yours. But yeah, have a feel free to fill out for the others as well. It'd be interesting to see how people's where people's opinions and kind of lie for some of these factors. it'll only take a couple of minutes, as you can see from what Phil's doing. There's one for each of the personas that we've been working on.
So were these created in the breakout rooms, or did you guys pre-prepare these? Wow.
No, this is all from the breakout room with a little bit of magic.
Wow. Good work, everyone.
And frantic copying and pasting.
Yet you looked so calm and
Always,
collected.
always. So we've got a couple of responses so far.
So Robin, I won't be able to share the Google summary.
I can present that. That's all right. We've got a few people clicking through at the moment. Hopefully, we've had 5 responses so far. There are good at least 15 people on the call. So hopefully, if you're not already, click the link and complete the form. I'm also completing Leona Wolf, cybercriminal. She recently took over as head of the notorious Wolf crime family and knows that shaking down local shop owners for protection money isn't the future. They need to diversify and digitize.
Is that a crime family going through a digital transformation?
Oh yeah, you know it.
They've probably got some very hip young kid telling them that everything they do should be customer focused.
Absolutely.
Right, would a crime family have a social media presence?
If they're looking to the future.
Yeah.
I think they mostly have your social media presence, don't they?
If it's a young one, forward looking.
I would definitely think lower levels would have that kind of thing going on for sure, like on the outside a little bit. Like she said, forward looking.
I'm really glad I'm not the only one who gets inspired by movies in this.
So there is an interesting conversation to have about whether your threat intelligence supplier or team is able to give you the information you need to create personas. Some of them struggle to step up to this level of engagement.
Right, okay, I think, let me just, open that up and Okie doke. All right, let me bring up the results, because I think that's probably enough time for everyone to Phil, are you okay to drop these into the placeholders on the slides as I'm going through?
Probably.
We can always carry on during the break. Right, okay. So let's see what everyone had to say. So let's start with Vladimir. Where's Vladimir? Somewhere in here. So works in a hardware store, but also a hacker for hire. Due to the poor economical situation of his family, could never attend uni, but is passionate about all things IT. He's interested in applying his skills for some financial gain. So yeah, personal gain there being the overriding goal. I think that's probably fair. A little bit there around fame and possibly revenge. There's a bit of hidden resentment. He's obviously connected to the internet, but yeah, may have access via a partner or to a specific network or system. Good range of skills here, I suppose, depending on how much you think he's got. I think probably from having a quick scan of that, he's probably more in the developer than, you know, right up as a researcher. That seems to be the favoured one there. He's external to the organisation, so doesn't necessarily know much about them, and is broadly speaking careful. Some people giving him the benefit of the doubt and saying he's law-abiding, and a few saying that he's completely unconcerned. I think probably having had a quick scan, he's a careful criminal is a good application there. Leona Wolf, personal gain. Yeah, I think that's a definite winner there. Probably a bit of revenge if you're if you're the new head of the mafia crime family or something like that. Connected to the internet, yeah, so they're accessing victims remotely overseas. Developer, power user, I think they're probably more in the power user space. So they're going through this digital transformation. They're probably buying things off, you know, dark web marketplaces and things like that, and kind of just buying that as a service. External to the organisation, maybe leverage some ex-organisation insiders, and yeah, they're pretty unconcerned. APT customer, let me jump back to this one. Highly skilled individual, offensive security, computer security expert who may sometimes violate laws, typical ethical standards, compromise system without permission, scope limitation, thrill of gaining privileged access to his target. So can anyone from Breakout Room 4 quickly let me know, is this someone who is working for a nation state, or is this someone who perhaps does, but they're applying these skills in their own time?
The latter.
Okay, so they've been trained up, they've got quite high capability, but they're doing it for their own fame or gain. I guess that's a bit of confusion there, which is where we've got national interests coming in. Wide range of opportunity. I suspect connected to the internet is the right one there. Maybe onward access to a specific network or system once they've got into the organisation. Yeah, researcher level skills. I think that's probably fair. Although they're not necessarily, I suppose, using those all the time in their attacks. The simple tricks often work best. Yeah, so this is someone who is a customer, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, okie doke. And probably it's a pretty much even split, isn't it, between whether they're a careful or unconcerned criminal. So we'll give Breakout Room 4 the benefit of the doubt as to which one of those two they want to pick.
I'd say they'd probably be careful but unconcerned, because no one's going to really figure them out for the most part.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we'll put them as careful then for that one. And then Dimitri, the DevOps engineer working in a mid-sized company, has access to various systems. He's frustrated with his manager because she doesn't understand his brilliance. Has some contacts in the dark web. dabbled with the dark side as a teenager. I'm going to completely invert the sex here. I think that she should be frustrated with her manager, just for the sake of some balance between all of these. So yeah, revenge is their primary driver. They've got access to the organization and specific systems. So in this sort of instance, we take the highest level, so the kind of access to the specific system and network. Yep, they're a developer, so they've got those kind of that kind of level of skill. They're an employee, so they know lots about the organization. Yeah, I think broadly speaking, they can be deterred, but they've got that level of frustration. Does that match with your thoughts? Breakout room 5.
Yeah, I think so.
Cool, awesome. So, that was quite the whistle stop tour. We've done the characteristics. So in the second half of this, what we're going to do is introduce you to a framework for how to kind of rapidly triage and prioritize vulnerabilities that you might find in your applications or be known about, and how you can feed in, if you've developed these sets of personas upfront with your teams, how you can apply those to help speed up the process as well. So we'll take a short break. We are just over 4 minutes behind where we said we were going to be, but I think that's pretty good going, Dida. You know, you were rolling your eyes about whether we'd keep on track. So yeah, we'll give it just over 5 minutes and start just after 12 o'clock.
Welcome back, guys. Over to you.
Hi. So second part of the session, we're talking about application vulnerability scoring. This is a separate process, but it builds on what we've just done on threat personas. We were just talking about that at the break. Personally, I've used threat personas very successfully in risk assessments. I've also used them in this for vulnerability scoring. There are other uses for personas, so communicating to executives a narrative, a story of a risk can be quite useful. This is just a specific use and mapping. Excuse me. There we go. Okay, so the scoring model, the application vulnerability scoring model, this is not meant to be some honking great big vendor described GRC platform that will go to the nth degree. The goal here is to be simple, explainable, and something that I can give to my development teams and my engineering teams to use quickly. They can use it, they can attach it to their tickets, and once they've been through it a couple of times with me, they can use it without me in the room. So the goal was to make it developer friendly, Q&A, so English language questions with answers, rather than choose some sort of random, sort of technically specific wording from a table somewhere. And the goal here is, I'm not trying to say this risk will cause you £50,000 worth of damage over the next 6 months. What I'm trying to say is this vulnerability is more important than that vulnerability. And that's it. So it's quick, it's dirty, but it's easy. So it comes down to 10 questions. And you'll find that the first 5 are relatively familiar. So how skilled is the attacker we're worrying about? Do the attackers have the knowledge they need to attack us? Why would they attack us? Will they work within legal and ethical boundaries? How likely are they to find us? Now, a lot of that, and I'll show in a minute, derives out of the threat persona. Then we're thinking about the vulnerability itself. How hard is it to find? How hard is it to use, to exploit? How many authentication steps are required to attack the vulnerability? And that's interesting. Google did a paper last year, I think, that showed the drop-off in successful attacks depending on numbers of authentication steps, which was incredible and incredibly useful, and showed very clearly a relationship. Is the vulnerability protected from attack, and are we monitoring for attacks on that vulnerability? Some fairly simple questions. I can ask those of a developer. A lot of the time they'll look at me and go, I don't know, but let me come back to you and I'll tell you. In some cases, the how hard is it to find or how hard is it to use, they'll probably need some of my input. But over time, especially with the OWASP top 10, they get a feel for what those sorts of answers look like. So that turns into a model, 10 parameters, 5 that we derive from the threat persona: skill, knowledge, reward, deterrability, recon approach, and then findability, exploitability, authentication, protection, and monitoring. Not a lot of information to gather, and actually a lot of the vulnerability questions around authentication, protection, and monitoring, you'll find on a lot of your systems, you'll answer them once for every vulnerability, and you'll never have to answer them again. The model components, it's very simple. You know, attacker skill versus vulnerability exploitability. Do we think they can do it? Attacker skill versus vulnerability authentications. Do we think they can get to it if we've got, you know, MFA enabled, if we've got passwords on? Opportunity, recon approach, skill, deterrability. Do they think they're going to find it versus how hard is it going to be to find? Motivation is, what are they going to get if they exploit it, plus their skill and opportunity. So if it's easy to do, but they don't get much reward, maybe they'll do it anyway. If it's hard to do and they don't get much reward, maybe they won't. And then ultimately the success we're looking at is motivation. So how likely are they actually to give it a go? Then with any specific protection and monitoring that we put in place. So as you can see, it builds up, and it's a very simple model. And one of the reasons I kept it simple was initially it was only ever built in a spreadsheet. This is the sort of thing that is eminently buildable into a bot to ask those 10 questions for somebody in a Slack channel. I happen to have a set of scores that we used in a couple of organizations around these vulnerabilities, and then a set of what are basically spreadsheet calculations to derive a number, and all you get is a number. And at the moment, I think the range of numbers is quite high. You know, at one place I was at, we normalized it into a 1 to 10 once we generated the number, so that we could do a rough comparison back to CVSS scores. I mean, it was very rough, and that's probably not the best thing to do. But like I say, easy, quick, and it's not designed to solve every problem. It's designed to solve a prioritization problem. So as a worked example, if I take my Disgruntled Insider, I've got that persona to look at. Her skill, she's a user. She doesn't particularly know much about how technology works. Her knowledge, she has private knowledge of the systems we're worried about. She's a highly trusted user of those systems. She'll get some reward out of it, maybe not the reward she's looking for. She will break ethical and legal boundaries, and she is an internal user. Going back to my previous scoring mechanism, I've got some numbers to work with there. Now I've got a vulnerability, and it depends on the sorts of vulnerability you're looking at. I will say this vulnerability has not affected the organization I was working with. It's just an easy example. But a broken access control that allows an internal user to enumerate records owned by a different internal user by incrementing a record identifier in the URL. A really simple, used to be very common bug. A lot of frameworks have killed this now. So it doesn't take a lot of skill to do, and it's pretty easy to find automatically and to exploit automatically. So findability, automated; exploitability, automated. In this case, authentication, none. And the reason being is I am considering an internal user as my attacker, so there is no further authentication that she needs to provide to get there. She will have already authenticated to get there. Protection, you know, in this case, we had nothing on our internal system that stopped them doing this. There was no in-application, no app firewall against internal users. In terms of monitoring, we did do security monitoring of what accounts were doing in the platform. We didn't have anything specific to this vulnerability, but we, you know, in hindsight, we'd be able to go back and see someone exploiting it. Very simple, quick and easy. Answer a set of questions, get a set of answers. That has given me then the numbers to throw into that model I showed you before, and has given me a number. Now that number is not going to mean a lot to you, but I'll tell you right now, that's not a high number. But very simply, it builds on itself. You can do it as simple as a spreadsheet. You can do it on the back of a bit of paper, and it does not take long to produce. What we're now going to do is we're going to ask you to do an example, and then you'll be able to compare your example to this one to see which vulnerability you think is more important and whether that works for you. So, audience participation incoming. I feel like I should have had a noise, a klaxon. Yeah. So we have got a cross-site scripting injection attack. It's in our customer web application, and it's available to all logged in customers. If they send a crafted message via our own site messaging system, the customer service agent, when they look at that message, will execute the cross-site scripting code. Customer service agents can authorize returns, refunds, they can issue gift cards, as well as accessing or updating customer account data. So this, that's not a browser we particularly want a bad guy to be in charge of. We don't have specific application monitoring, but we do have a cloud-based WAF on the front end using the OWASP core mod security rules. So this is the injection attack. This is the vulnerability we would like to score. And what we would like you to do is to take the persona that you've generated and this injection attack in order to create a score. Oh, hang on. Robin.
Hello.
I forget how we were going to do this.
That is a good question, isn't it? I think, because we didn't get your spreadsheet ported across, did we? I think it's probably going to be, you've got the score levels there, haven't you? Pop the spreadsheet up and it might just be a little bit of a paper-based exercise for people to kind of work it through.
Okay, let me stop sharing. Oh, actually, no, I can go back to
slide 23 is what you're looking for.
Yeah. Excellent. So should we break into breakout rooms again, Dina?
I have opened them.
Excellent. So if everyone can jump into the breakout room, and then we will ask you to put the numbers together for your threat persona that you've generated and take that vulnerability as well. Robin, are you able to, I'm just trying to work out how we would share, because they need to see this and the vulnerability, don't they?
Well, people have got the link to the slides, haven't they? So, but I'll copy this across into the threat personas deck that people have been editing as well.
Brilliant. That'd be useful. Thank you. Sorry about that, everyone. I'll just share my screen. Okay, so we're back. We have the spreadsheet implementation. We're talking about the cross-site scripting injection attack. In breakout room 1, we've ended up with a score which is quite low, I think, a score of 15. And I suspect that's been driven by how well do we protect the vulnerability from attack, and are we watching for the vulnerability? So in both of those, our protection and monitoring we've scored at the highest level. And that brings down the sort of priority on this attack. I would say I'm a little bit surprised, especially by the monitoring. So, but that said, it's cross-site scripting is a fairly well-known vulnerability. It's the sort of thing we would expect to see in the OWASP mod security rules in the WAF. So maybe that's a fair deal. It's still of a higher priority than the one we had seen previously that I did as a worked example, which gave us a score of 13. Is breakout room 5 ready to discuss, or shall we leave it at that?
I think we can discuss it. We haven't filled it in entirely.
Okay, do you want to talk through where you see your vulnerability score? Where do you think you're likely to end up?
Wasn't quite sure about what was going on with the first one because we're going to get a negative score on that.
Yeah, that happens.
That happens, okay. I mean, I think the one that maybe pops out is the monitoring. We figured that, given the position the threat actor was in, they could probably disable the monitoring, come up with some legitimate reason for it being disabled for a period of time. So that would be ineffective. The protection's pretty ineffective, the authentication. Depending on the scenario, they could potentially be an employee and a customer. So they'd have that customer side access as well as having the internal view from being an employee. I guess one of the things we did talk about was the vulnerability score, kind of including, I guess, the threat actors' goals, capability, the level of vulnerability, but we're really looking at the goals of and the gain to the threat actor and not the loss to the organization. So we discussed that a little bit as well.
Yep, no, I think that's a fair deal. I mean, it is quite explicitly not a risk score.
Yeah.
To my mind, and I'll talk about this in my other session on the Open Information Security Risk Universe and my session on modern security risk. Not that I'm doing a lot of sessions, but to my mind, a risk is something that happens and some harm that comes from it. This is much more about the vulnerability. This is about the thing that might cause a thing to happen. And absolutely, if you've got a risk framework that you could build this under, you can absolutely field another layer of understanding. What I would say is most of the development teams I work with have no concept of the harms from a cyber attack. So unless you're feeding that to them in the same way you do with the personas, it won't, that will be a real challenge for them to understand.
Absolutely.
And that's interesting. I mean, there may well be a case for a sort of simplified set of consequence characteristics to feed into this. That's something to think about.
But looking at it from the perspective of the persona, there, in a lot of cases, maybe they're looking for personal gain and they don't care what the impacts are on the business. I guess maybe if you're looking more at the revenge side of things, then they are more focused on the organizational impact.
Yeah, and that's about judging, the goals basically. Are they when you come to judging reward? One of the reasons why that is fairly non-specific is sort of high reward, some reward, no reward. It depends on what it is they're trying to achieve. So if they're trying to steal money, it's relatively easy to understand how much money they're stealing. If they're trying to cause trouble, then again, it's your judgment. If they exploit this, is this going to cause a lot of trouble for the business? Okay, I'm just going to, next breakout room, do you want to discuss yours?
Yeah, so in our case, this is a perspective of an external attacker. So he would have to pass first some level of authentication. I mean, the scenario is where customer support received probably something, let's say the payload, and then starts running into that. Skills of the attacker are pretty high. So yeah, in our case, we consider, I mean, I don't know how much high is the score, but it's very likely that our persona would be able to use this vulnerability, at least in my opinion.
Well, it's interesting. So it's as 42, which you would expect an APT to have a higher score, and excellent Douglas Adams reference there. But as 42, in comparison to my worked example, which was a 13, you would worry about this a lot more. And that's really the only purpose of the score. It's not there to be objective. The difference between 42 and 41 doesn't matter. It's just that one's bigger and one's smaller. And I think if you collect a number of these over time, you might be able to say anything above 40 we have to work on right now, anything below 10 we don't care about. You might be able to set some rules like that, but that, the purpose of this is really to say, I've got 5 vulnerabilities in front of me, which one do I start with? And it's as simple as that. It's designed just to be a quick way of getting there. Excellent. Okay, I'm just going to jump back to the presentation. Okay, so we have a set of questions. We want to understand if the questions we're asking are developer friendly enough. We want to know if we're asking for the right information, the model parameters. Do the way that they relate to each other make sense? Those numbers that I put in the spreadsheet, would you change them? Would you add or take away anything? So what we're interested in is feedback. And I realise that we've just dumped this on you and you might need to go away and think about it a bit. So we're happy to take that after the fact, but we're also happy to take it now. Our intention is to open this up and make it available for everyone to contribute, which includes telling us we're completely wrong and we should change things. So yeah, does anyone have any specific feedback they'd like to give us as we stand?
So my question would be, not specific about this, but the logistics of it. So if people want to contribute to it after the session, are you going to like open a new channel in the Slack so that people can write to you from there?
So my intention was to set up a GitHub repository and use that as because I want to open it up to sort of broader than just the OSS. So yeah, probably through the GitHub repository, but also I think by Robin and myself via email, or we're on the Slack, so ask us questions on the Slack as well.
Okay. And we can link to that GitHub repo from the OSS side, because we will be putting all the outcome documents anyway.
So what we'll be dropping in there is the slides. We'll also drop in a spreadsheet with the current implementation. And probably I will get around to taking the write-up and turning it into a document that describes what we're talking about, so someone can pick up a document and take it away.
Cool.
Thinking about the attacker skill, putting it at 0 for a higher skill level is rather interesting. We might want to think of a different way to name that.
Yes, so I think when I built the model, I focused more on how things related to each other and what the final number was, rather than what the numbers on the way were. But as I was looking at yours, I remember thinking to myself, that was interesting. That 0 doesn't seem like the right way of communicating. So yes, good point. I think probably we need to look at the scoring numbers to sort of shift it from a negative to a more positive view.
Yeah, that's just little adjustments here and there.
Yeah.
I think this would be interesting to see implemented in connection with the what we've been doing in other areas with the idea for a game and for and with the collectible cards. I think it would be interesting to implement this as a part of that. So I'm really interested in seeing where this goes.
Yep. One of the futures I've got in mind for it, when in my copious spare time, is probably a Slack bot that not only can have the conversation with the engineering team to allow them to do some of this themselves, and provide some supporting information for definitions and that sort of thing, but also then to have it automatically create tickets. So they can, or update tickets that exist. And I think there'll be some real value in enabling teams themselves, once they've got a handle on this, to be able to just talk to a bot and get where they're going.
Awesome.
Excellent. So it sounds like that's probably the feedback we're likely to get. Unless anyone else has anything to say. Didar, what was it you were looking to do at the end here?
So to fill in the outcomes document, which I think you guys have done quite well during the session, we can just transfer them into the template for consistency after the session. And one thing was doing a 5-minute debrief of what we have discussed in this session. What are the outcomes? What's the next steps? That kind of thing. It can be up to 5 minutes, but yeah. And we will cut that part as debriefs for all sessions, which will be easy, like a teaser for your session, so people can decide whether to watch the whole thing or not. Because there will be like 96 sessions in this summit. And
so do we do the debrief or do the attendees?
so you record it. We will record it here and now in a few minutes whenever you feel ready.
I think we're ready, are we not, Robin?
As we'll ever be.
Okay then. Go, go, go.
I'm still not entirely sure what I'm doing.
That's fine. Just say this is the debrief and the session name and what we've talked about. We've done some exercises and what is the outcomes and what's the next steps. Where will you host this and where do you want to take this?
Okay, this is the debrief for the application vulnerability scoring and the threat persona session. We've discussed what threat personas are. We've run some interactive sessions and developed some threat personas in the room. We've discussed a method for fast and easy relative scoring of application vulnerabilities, and we've run through a vulnerability in the room as an exercise. Our next steps are to take the content we've created and what we've learned from this session and generate an open GitHub repository, including the slides, a spreadsheet, and eventually a document. And we will be open sourcing this in order to allow people to build on, use, comment, and change.
And thank you so much.